The latest information and analysis of events from around the world with Basil Valentine on today's News Talk, TNT.
And welcome back to this final Overdrive section today, Tuesday, the 17th of September. I'm delighted to say I'm joined by Rich Rubino, who is the author of 3 books, The Political Bible of Humorous Quotations from American Politics. Well, we could certainly do with some of them now, Rich, as well as Make Every Vote Equal, What a Novel Idea, and The Political Bible of Little Known Facts in American Politics, regular on MSNBC, Fox News, Al Jazeera, and over 100 radio stations. Great to have you back to today's News Talk, Rich. Now then, who knew not one but 2 assassination attempts on Republican nominee and former President Donald J. Trump in this cycle? He got a bit of a poll boost out of the first one. Do you think he's going to do so again?
I don't think so. I think that the polls that I've seen after this whole incident show that Vice President Harris actually has about a 6-point lead in the popular vote and is leading in most swing states. As a matter of fact, even the state of Iowa, Des Moines Register poll. This is a state that Donald Trump took handily the last time around. Showed that she's only down by about 4 points in the state of Iowa. So I think that part of it is that this country is just so bifurcated. It's very hard for Donald Trump to try to get any leverage right now. That doesn't mean he can't win, but if he wins, it has to be about animating his base, not trying to get the kind of elusive, persuadable voters.
Well, I'm very surprised to hear you say that. Everything I've seen to date has shown it being neck and neck, with the race effectively tightening since the end of the Harris honeymoon period. Did she get a big boost after the debate, which most observers say she won?
Yeah, she got but it's a very small one. It's not a major one. Just like after the convention, she got a very small bounce, nothing major. So I think that generally speaking, the election's been reset. We're pretty much back to where we were before the conventions, and it's basically Vice President Harris with a small, slim lead. And the biggest I've seen is 6 points in the popular vote. But in the United States, the popular vote is irrelevant. It's the Electoral College that matters on Election Day.
Now, amongst the candidates I've seen surging is Jill Stein, making quite a big splash, particularly among Muslim voters, but not just among Muslim voters, amongst young progressives as well in the Midwest, in some of those crucial swing states. Do you think there's a chance that support for her might be enough to deprive Harris of the keys to the White House?
Yes, there's absolutely a chance of that. The question with Jill Stein is how many of her voters are people who would normally vote Democrat, who are disgruntled by the party, and how many of those are voters that, frankly, some of them maybe would have voted for Trump otherwise. They're just completely dissatisfied with the system. The other thing is you have to be making the supposition there that everybody who votes for Jill Stein is on the left. Some people simply vote for her as a protest vote. But that being said, there is certainly an aperture on the left wing of the Democratic Party for voters who are disgruntled by the Biden-Harris administration's policies toward the Gaza conflict specifically. Jill Stein is there as a vacuum. States like Michigan, which has really a large Arab American population, right around the Dearborn area, for example. Many of them have voted in the primary for uncommitted, meaning that they did not vote for Joe Biden when he was on the ballot. They are very disheartened with the Biden administration. Therefore, some of them may go over to Jill Stein. The Democrats tend to blame Jill Stein in 2016 for Hillary Clinton's loss. The question there again is how many of those voters would have not voted anyways. If you listen to Jill Stein's rhetoric, it's very much against the corporate influence of both parties. So she does take on both parties, but my guess is she will probably take a few votes off from the left. But on the other side of that, you have Chase Oliver, the Libertarian Party candidate. If she takes from the left, theoretically, he could also take from the right. And the other thing you have with Jill Stein, you have a split within the left wing of the political spectrum, because you also have Cornel West running, and Cornel West and Jill Stein, while they don't necessarily get along personally, ideologically they're very close together.
Yeah, you make some very good points. West's campaign has sort of pretty much collapsed, though, hasn't it? I mean, it's not getting much coverage.
No, it really hasn't. He actually. there were a lot of Republicans who were trying to get signatures for him because their thought process was kind of the enemy of my enemy. So they would be trying to get signatures, just like they got signatures for Ralph Nader when he would run in 2004 after the 2000 election debacle. A lot of them this time around are trying to get signatures for him. But he is somebody who is not getting nearly as much attention. But for a while, actually, Sean Hannity was having him on his show, which is a large audience on Fox. I think part of that was because they know that they want to give him a boost to try to siphon off votes that potentially would go to the Democratic candidate. My guess is right now he's more siphoning off votes that potentially go to Jill Stein.
It's so ironic, isn't it, that someone like Sean Hannity would give a platform to Cornel West when the two are ideologically almost diametrically opposed. But MSNBC, for example, who theoretically or supposedly would be more sympathetic to West's position, have absolutely no interest in him or Jill Stein. I mean, this is quite a sort of funny yet damning indictment of the state of the relationship between US corporate media and politics.
Yeah, it's very interesting. From a conservative standpoint, you want to prop up Jill Stein, you want to prop up Cornel West. Donald Trump actually has come out in the past and talked about how Jill Stein is a better candidate on environmental issues than the Democrat. Now, would Donald Trump actually support Jill Stein's policies? Probably not. But what he wants to do is, if there's anybody that's potentially hearing about what he's writing about, that would say that's on the left wing of the Democratic Party, that would say that I don't really, I'm kind of disgruntled with what the Democrats have done on the environment. Maybe, just maybe, I will go over to Jill Stein. I think that Donald Trump sees her as a weapon. I think that that's why Sean Hannity is using her as a weapon. And I think that's certainly it's interesting. There's really nobody on the right that is tantamount to that. You don't see Chase Oliver, for example, or Randall Terry, the Constitution Party, who's very much an anti-abortion activist. You don't see them on MSNBC the way that you do see Cornel West sometimes making news on Fox News.
You make some very good points. Now, I'm looking at polls from Pennsylvania, Trump v. Harris, the direct matchup published today. Insider Advantage has Trump 50, Harris 48, while the USA Today Suffolk poll has Trump 46, Harris 49. So Trump up 2 in one poll, Harris up 3 in the other. It's a coin flip, isn't it? And both candidates really need Pennsylvania to get to the White House.
Yeah, Pennsylvania is the most critical state. That's why Governor Josh Shapiro, even though he'd just been elected governor in 2022, was on the short list for potential vice presidential candidates for Vice President Harris. The thought process being that him on the ticket would help and maybe tip the edge of the 19 electoral votes. It's currently the largest swing state. It has 19 electoral votes. It was part of the blue wall. The blue wall being Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania. Those were the 3 states that Bill Clinton took in 1992, won for his reelection in 96. Then Gore won it, John Kerry won it, and Barack Obama won it, but Hillary Clinton was not able to win it. Joe Biden came back and won all 3 of those states. They're absolutely critical. The Republicans cannot win the presidency without them. Pennsylvania being the largest swing state. That's why where we had the Electoral College in the United States, it's almost like you're running for governor of Pennsylvania. You go to every little municipality in the state and you ignore large states like California and small states like Idaho. I think, interestingly, the Democrats need Pennsylvania. Absolutely need Pennsylvania. The Republicans probably can win without it. But the Democrats, the Republicans, on the other hand, absolutely need a state with 16 electoral votes, which is North Carolina, which Donald Trump won by about 1.8% last time around. Barack Obama had won it the first time in 2008, lost it the second time around. Bill Clinton lost it twice. Jimmy Carter was able to win it in 1976. It's a very critical state for the Republicans, and that's why the Democrats are putting so much money into North Carolina. The Democrats need Pennsylvania. The Republicans need North Carolina.
Democrat messaging seems to be increasingly simplistic, which at the convention, joy was the buzzword. Now it's turn the page. And we had Gwen Waltz, the wife of the vice presidential running mate, Tim Waltz, making a sort of really exaggerated speech where she amplified that particular meme to the point of irritation. And yet, of course, Harris, wanting to turn the page, but turn the page on what? She's been in the White House for the last 4 years. Are the Democrats going to develop any more sophisticated messaging than that? Or are they appealing to the lowest common denominator?
No, I don't think so. She speaks very much in platitudes. She gives she has a grand design of what she wants, but she's not giving specifics. She's only had one major interview so far with Dana Bash on CNN. She clearly needs to do more interviews, and they're going to ask her questions specifically about her plans and how they're going to be deficit neutral, because the United States does have a national debt approaching $32 trillion. The deficits are approaching $2 trillion a year now. So that's going to be certainly an issue for her. I think, though, that that's what you do in a political campaign. You try to say as little as you possibly can substantively, because you don't want to alienate as many voters as you want to alienate, rather, as few voters as you possibly can do. That's been her strategy so far. And in the last debate, Donald Trump really didn't hold her feet to the fire. At one point, David Muir tried to hold her feet a little bit to the fire, but he did the same thing to Donald Trump. But she really does need to give specifics on what a lot of her plans are. My guess is she's going to try to speak as much in platitudes as she possibly can. And frankly, Donald Trump's doing a lot of the same thing.
He is, unfortunately. He'd do well to focus on some specifics himself. As we speak, Kamala is on stage in Philadelphia, taking questions from 3 reporters in a live conversation organized by the National Association of Black Journalists. Obviously, the African-American vote is going to be crucial to her chances of success, but she isn't really African-American herself, is she? She's simply trying to pass herself off as one, as a member of that community, because although she is a woman of color, she's of Indian extraction. Now, Donald Trump's come under heavy attack for making that observation. Do you think it's wise for him to reiterate it, or he's just got to leave it alone, hasn't he?
No, I don't think it helps at all. I think it reminds me a little bit of when he said about John McCain. He was asked a question. He said, "I don't like people that were shot down," even though he himself had never served in Vietnam. I don't see how this really serves him particularly well. In Vice President Harris's case, her father was Jamaican, her mother was Indian, so I guess she'd be mixed race. Barack Obama, by the way, was somebody whose father was from Kenya, whose mother was from Kansas. So they're very similar. Colin Powell had Jamaican roots, so they're really it's really, I think, I think you can debate kind of what African American really is, whether you would include Jamaicans, but I don't think that that's necessarily going to be something that's going to benefit. That's going to necessarily benefit Donald Trump. But when she was in the United States Senate, she was a member of the Congressional Black Caucus. If I were Donald Trump, I would try to instead go after her for saying that her record as Attorney General, by saying essentially what Tulsi Gabbard said in one of the debates when she tried to criticize her for her leadership in terms of putting people in jail for marijuana use, rightly or wrongly. That might be better to go over and say that you put African Americans in jail for something that's a relatively minor misdemeanor, as opposed to taking on and saying that she's not black.
And indeed, she then cackled in that particularly irritating way when she was challenged about whether she'd ever smoked marijuana herself. So the hypocrisy is absolutely glaring. Now then, Tim Walz is Harris's VP pick. He's gone a bit quiet, but J.D. Vance, on the other hand, is being used as Donald Trump's attack dog, if anything. And he's made remarks over the last couple of days that the difference between Democratic rhetoric and Republican rhetoric in this election is that only Donald Trump has been shot at. And the White House press secretary, Karine Jean-Pierre, has condemned those remarks as dangerous. Nevertheless, strictly speaking, he's absolutely right. There's a Trump derangement syndrome abroad in the United States, which demonizes the former president in a way that I don't think I can ever remember any candidate being demonized before, Rich.
Well, I think the Trump people are also very much, and if you go on social media, you'll see that they're very much demonizing Vice President Harris by essentially saying that she's a communist, criticizing lots of different parts of her I think at the end of the day, there's left-wing rhetoric that goes after the Republicans. There's right-wing rhetoric that goes after the Democrats. And it's very perilous, certainly for our time, because we live in such a polarized time. And all it takes is 0.25% of the population to be that outraged that they would actually they would actually seriously consider pointing a gun at one of the presidential candidates. But I think that it's where we are in the United States right now. And I think that it's part of it is that people that will only listen to networks where they agree with and only talk to people that they agree with, therefore start to believe that the other side is the absolute adversary and they have to kind of challenge them. And that's what you have, why you have these. But I think that there certainly could have been just as many chances for somebody to go after Vice President Harris. But as President Trump, I think that there's just such a polarized country, and I think they need to turn down the temperature a notch.
I couldn't agree with you more. Perhaps the assassination attempt will bring that about because, Trump looks like he might need a game changer, basically. If it turns out that Ralph can be tied to the Democrats in some way or some wider conspiracy emerges, then that might provide it. What do you think, Rich?
Yes, absolutely. It will be a small bump of support for him. I don't think it's going to be a game changer. I think that at the end of the day, American people are going to be voting on the issues, and for that matter, and to a certain extent on the personalities and on wanting to be part of an affinity group. We're such a polarized, it's become almost like the Red Sox Yankees, whereby the people on the left have to vote for the Democrat, people on the right have to vote for Donald Trump, and people don't necessarily know on the left or the right what it means to be in the left or the right, but they live in communities where other people are on the left or the right, so they say, well, that must be me, I'm going to vote for that person. But I don't think that Mr. Ruth is going to be much of a factor come election day. Although I'm sure Donald Trump will try to make himself out to be a martyr, like he did on the first assassination attempt when he said "fight, fight, fight." At the end of the day, I don't think this is going to be a flagship issue for a litany of voters.
Perhaps because this time it was nipped in the bud. Great talking to you as always, Rich. Finally, where's your $10 going? Who's going to be inaugurated on January the 20th?
I would never make a bet other than it probably won't be Jill Stein or Cornel West or Chase Oliver.
And I'll agree with you on that. Thank you so much for joining me today, Rich Rubino.
Thank you.
Fascinating as always. Do hope you enjoyed the whole program. David Shaler, wow, what an explosive guy. This is why we have a freedom of speech platform here on Today's News Talk, and we will continue to do so for as long as it takes. I'm Basil Valentine. See you all again tomorrow.